Hey guys, James here with Waterford Business Solutions. And one of the things that we deal with a lot is our niche. Because we work almost exclusively with contractors, home service professionals, builders, people in the trades, in the construction industry, we know a lot about what's kind of involved in the day-to-day workings, the day-to-day bookkeeping, the day-to-day activities of those types of businesses. So we're very familiar with how all of that kind of functions. And when new clients come to me, one of the things that a lot of them ask is, what's different? Why work with y'all? Why contractor specific accounting rather than just going to my CPA down the street? So we've done so many videos talking about a lot of different things, focusing on financials, focusing on how to use QuickBooks, etc. We wanted to take a little bit of time this week to talk about what is different about focusing on contractor specific and trade specific accounting. Now, if you've got a business coach, you're probably used to some form of contractor specific accounting where they're wanting to make sure that they're tracking not just your income for taxes, but they're wanting to understand your direct labor versus your indirect labor. They're wanting to understand your different business units, your classes, your material purchases, your breakdown of vehicle expenses, your breakdown of warehouse or office expenses, and they give you this super, super long, generally when we get it from a lot of these business coaches, it's over 200 accounts for P&L, which is great. It's a lot of information, and that's a start to contractor specific accounting. But what a business coach focuses on is helping you to understand your business, which is, again, great. That's what we should be doing. But what many of these coaches screw up on, or what many of these coaches don't understand properly, is not just how to understand your business, but what is required tax-wise. And so they'll put things in areas that don't work for taxes, or they will move things around that would go against tax law just to give you the business information. The other thing that business coaches generally don't understand is the systems you're working with. What you can do in Service Titan isn't what you can do in Jobber, isn't what you can do in HouseCall Pro, isn't what you can do in Notify, Buildertrend, whatever system you're using. These systems all have different ways that you're able to pull information and different really integrations with QuickBooks to provide the details that you may be looking for. So a business coach is really focusing on giving you that business specific information, which is great, but they're not focusing on providing the tax information and the end of year legal compliance and making sure that what they're suggesting works with the systems that you're trying to use or trying to implement. So that's where a business coach comes in. Vice versa, where a typical accountant, CPA, tax firm, something like that's going to come in, they're not going to really know the ins and outs like a business coach understands, where we want to be breaking down the direct labor, we want to be breaking down the indirect labor, all of that. They're going to be focusing just on the tax side of everything and the end of year compliance. So it creates a very simple balance sheet, which is pretty much only good for tax purposes. I met with a client actually last week that they had a honestly great set of books from a tax perspective. And I told the client there's nothing wrong with these books from a tax perspective, but this client is looking to sell their business this year. And what they need to sell their business, their financials don't comply with that, because what someone who is going to want to buy their specific type of business is going to want to see in financials is not in their financials because they have focused on tax specific accounting. And once again, a regular accountant, regular CPA, regular tax firm, they're not going to understand integrations. They're not going to understand third-party systems and what those systems do because they're not taking the time to learn that system because they're not focused on you specifically or your industry specifically. They're working with anyone and everyone who can fog a mirror. That's something that I was taught kind of as I got into this. If you work with everyone who can fog a mirror, you work with no one because you can't customize your services specifically to them. You don't understand them nearly as well. They don't have the time to study and understand how these integrations and how these third-party systems and all that work, so they just rush into it. They just go ahead and work only on the tax side, and then when something goes wrong or when something doesn't work the way they want it to, they blame it on the integration rather than blaming it on, I don't have time to know. So at the end of the day, what is contractor-specific accounting? Well, it's combining all of that together. It's combining what the business coach is telling you. It's combining what the tax accountant's telling you. It's combining what the integration needs and how the integration works. It's combining all of those things together to give us one seamless system that you understand. So we always start with contractor-specific accounting with the question of what dispatch, what job system are you using to manage your pipeline, to manage your jobs, to dispatch, to invoice. What are you using there? We pick that system and then we build from there. Because, like I said, what I'm going to need to do and what I'm going to need to set up within QuickBooks to give you these financials is going to be different when I'm working with HouseCall Pro versus Service Titan versus Notify versus Insert Blank. Each of these are going to work a little bit different, integrate a little bit different, cause some different issues there, and not issues per se, but just changes in how we look at and understand things. So we really have to start with what is the system you're using. We then use that system to integrate and influence what we're going to see in QuickBooks. In QuickBooks, we're going to take what we need for taxes. What are the things that we're going to need on the tax return, which is dependent on what type of entity are you. Are you a standard LLC filing a Schedule C? Are you a corporation with an 1120? Are you an S Corp with an 1120S? Do you have an 1120S or a C Corp election on your LLC? Are you a partnership? We've got to look at all of that to then determine what are the tax requirements for you as a client so that we can make sure we set up the equity accounts right, we can make sure that we set up the expense accounts right, because each of these different entities will have marginally different things that we have to make sure that we're reporting to the IRS. With S Corps and C Corps, we have to make sure that we're reporting owner's pay. We don't have to do that with LLCs and 1065s or partnerships or Schedule Cs. So that's one thing we have to look at. With a C Corp, you can't take owner's draws out. You have to take out guaranteed dividends if that's something that you're doing, which is great, but that means we have to think about and plan for that and customize your books to that to make sure you're within tax compliance there for that. And there's 20, 30, 40 others that I could hit on. But that's where we want to start is what system are you using and then what entity type are you to create the tax compliance. From there, we finally bring in the business coach mindset of, okay, let's go ahead and break down your direct versus indirect expenses. Let's break down your direct and indirect labor. Let's break down your materials and everything. Let's get a solid understanding there with everything. Your vehicles, your credit card processing fees. Let's get all of this stuff set up so that we can see what your gross profit margin is versus your net profit margin, your overhead cost, everything like that. That's when we start mapping all that out, because at the end of the day, for tax purposes, we can generally move something around that you might be calling a cost of goods sold that really isn't a cost of goods sold. One of the examples that I'll give all the time is on a tax return, there is no credit card processing fee or bank charge as a cost of goods sold because that's not a cost of goods sold from a tax perspective. But from a business operational perspective, that is a cost of goods sold. So we have to look at that and we have to consider that there. So it's definitely something that we have to make sure we're looking at, we're analyzing, and going through there with setting up first the integration and the system you're using, then the tax compliance, and finally the business understanding. The other thing that I really like to focus on with our clients is let's not take and create a COA of 100, 150, 200 accounts for a P&L. What is it that the client is used to looking at? What is it that the client needs to look at? And let's keep some form of simplicity to not overwhelm you. So that's kind of the fourth and final thing that we like to look at is, okay, you want to see your advertising breakdown and you want to see what are you paying for Google ads versus what are you paying for Yelp versus what are you paying for Facebook versus your marketing agency versus just insert blank. You want to see that breakdown. Well, a lot of times I see clients come to me and I see business coaches that give me a COA with 20 different advertising accounts. At the end of the month, when I'm reviewing that with you, that takes up a huge chunk of your P&L. And even though we can condense it, it's a lot of information and it's going to distract you. So we want to make sure that we edit that P&L down so that we look at what is most important to look at the P&L and what are things that we can pull this information elsewhere from. For example, all that advertising stuff, as long as we're putting the name of the vendor on the expense, we can pull an expense by vendor report, filter it down by all those different vendors that you're wanting to look at for advertising purposes, and then we can tell you this is how much you paid to each and every one of those without having each and every one listed on your P&L. So we simplify down that P&L so that at the end of the month, when we're trying to understand, hey, where is the issues with business performance, with business profitability, we're looking at a nice, clean, clear sheet. And if it comes out that, oh, advertising is an issue, cool. We go to this additional report that we've created that provides us a little bit more clarity and a little bit more detail. So at the end of the day, contractor-specific accounting falls into 4 different areas. What is the system that you're using in your integration? Build from that. What is your entity type and the tax requirements? Build from that. What are the business information things you need with direct versus indirect, vehicle expenses, so on and so forth for your type of business? Build from that. And once you do all of that, then come back and edit. What do I need on my P&L versus what are things that I can come back and look at a different way or through a different report? So we take the first 3 things, create our COA, we create all the information that we need so that we have a solid P&L, a solid balance sheet, and we can understand everything going on there. And then we use that 4th step to edit down and say, okay, what's on here that I might be able to pull from elsewhere? If you're struggling with how to set up your COA or how to understand your business or anything like that, don't hesitate to reach out to us here at Waterford Business Solutions. It's what we do day in and day out. We implement chart of accounts, we implement accounting like this, even for clients that we're not managing everything for every single day. So we're happy to help you out, and you can simply just give us a call at 864-351-0852. or shoot us an email at info@waterfordbusiness.com, and we'd be happy to help you out, get you pointed in the right direction so that you can master your own finances with your business. If you feel like you've got a good handle on that, that's great. Still, go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel here. We put out weekly videos. We've already got most of 2026 planned out, and so we're happy to keep providing weekly information to make sure that you are just that, a master of your company's finances and understanding.